Okay, firstly, a huge thank you to Boaz and Miriam and the entire team who have worked so hard to deliver this amazing conference, and I feel very honoured to be part of it. Okay, this is an abbreviated version of the 4-hour paper I had prepared, so I've condensed it down to 20 minutes or so, and I'll skip through some of the examples that may have to be shown at another time. The scheduling has also been a work of genius, so the visit to Lochemea Geta Ot yesterday was perfect timing, giving you the chance to see the Viennic model of Treblinka, which will compare with the model that I'm presenting today. But visiting yesterday has also thrown some of my theories about it, and it's also inspired me to reassess some of the assertions that I had developed after seeing it last year for the first time. So anyway, to start, okay. The Jewish Holocaust Centre in Melbourne, Australia was established by survivors in the mid-1980s. It has a video testimonies department run by Philip Maisel, who is a survivor in his 90s, and the archives where I'm stationed holds nearly 18,000 original items, with a small selection on public display in the museum. These artefacts contribute to various themes in Holocaust narratives and operate as material testament to events as well as to survivors and victims. The Centre focuses heavily on its education program, which incorporates survivor guides presenting their testimonies to the almost 20,000 school students annually and other visitors. Other guides are also trained, and there is a Custodians of Memory program being implemented as the survivors retire. To refocus on our archives, it is a repository of primary source evidence for researchers, both academic and the general public. One of the great challenges we face is to increase the documentation and understanding of items. And often cross-reference with video testimony when documentation has not been captured in text. One of the challenges is to ensure that the repository is not static, but remains an active site of evaluation that extends beyond the monumental, and one way to do this is to draw upon all the various sources using witness testimony with tangible artefacts on a foundation of history. We're also in the midst of planning a launch of an online database within the next couple of years, and the majority of the collection should be available now internationally. We are working hard to ensure that the descriptions are precise. The thematic display within the curated framework of the museum includes pre-war vanished world, rise of Nazism, anti-Semitism, ghettos, camps, and also a children's section. Artworks permeate all areas of the museum. They are inseparable from the documents and other objects and enhance understanding of the impact of events. But in addition to these Barthesian puncta, the role of artworks extends as eyewitness, capturing in line and material construction what eluded the camera lens and demonstrating the emotional devastation of the Holocaust. I'm going to skip through these images. So with my background in art history, I'm quite drawn to the artworks as well as other pieces. We've got a small art collection, but it's quite significant, and works are created by both amateur and professional artists, and for various reasons. Most of the works appear straightforward, sketches depicting incarceration, Nazi brutality, paintings from photos to capture a soul that would be soon lost, and sculptures representing the lost world. I'll just skip through this. Okay. All right. Now, we know that art created during the Holocaust as well as soon after liberation was motivated by the creator to be used as visual testimony beyond a mere witness statement, as one who was actively victimised and brutalised. The drawings and paintings by professional artist David Aller, a Frenchman who was a Sonderkommando in Auschwitz, is a prime example. But where Aller began to create his testimony onwards from the last days of Auschwitz, including formal drawings that were used as evidence in war crimes trials, works by other survivors took longer. and one I will focus on today, took nearly 40 years to manifest. Oller's drawings of the gas chambers were later used, as we found out this morning, in the David Irving versus Deborah Lipstadt trial in 2000, with Irving marking his presence as a Holocaust denier long before with the publication of Hitler's War in 1977. So we're seeing a rise in the late 70s of Holocaust denial, along with a rise of awareness of Holocaust in film as yes, sorry.
Okay.
Is this better? Is this better? Okay.
No choice, just shout.
Okay. There is an artwork in the Jewish Holocaust Centre.
Wonderful.
I need to learn how to project. That is one of the most compelling, complex and complicated items in the collection. In grand scale, the work dominates the museum and it forms an unquestioned centrepiece. This work is a tableau model of Treblinka, and it was created by Chaim Steyer, who had been a Sonderkommando in Treblinka 1 and 2, and survived both the uprising in August 1943 and the subsequent months in hiding until liberation. Steyer was heavily involved with the Jewish Holocaust Centre since the early days, and his large tableau model continues his legacy. Okay, but I did have some other examples of site plans, which I'm going to skip through slowly. Herman Baum, an architect. Franz Goldstein, whose diaries remained hidden away until his death. Okay, all right, now let's examine this model of Treblinka built by Chaim Steyer in the early to mid-1980s. Chaim was born to a traditional Jewish family in 1909 in Częstochowa, Poland. He lived next door to the synagogue for many years. He was a carpenter and he also played soccer. And he married Hela Majorczyk in July 1939. The couple had a daughter. In September 1942, when Chaim was 33, the family was deported to Treblinka. Hela and the child were murdered in the gas chamber shortly after arrival. Chaim was recognised by a Częstochowan friend and recommended for service in the sorting department. He did this for 2 weeks in Treblinka 1, which was located near the railway station entrance, where the items of incoming Jews were stripped of their possessions and clothing. Steyer then worked as a Sonderkommando in Treblinka 2 for the next 11 months, clearing the gas chambers of bodies and relocating them to the pits for burning and destruction. Steyer was one of less than 70 people to have survived the uprising in August 1943, in which 700 people, mainly Jews, escaped. Steyer hid in the forests, occasionally attaching himself to groups of partisans, until liberation in 1944. A Russian soldier, who was likely Jewish, asked Steyer to come back to Treblinka. I don't need to state how reluctant Steyer was. After this, Steyer did not go back to the Treblinka site until 1989. Steyer moved to Israel after the war, then he immigrated to Melbourne, Australia in 1955. He had married again after the war to Hannah and had 2 children. After being widowed, he later married for a 3rd time to Rosa in 1972. Steyer died in 2008 at the age of 98. So his legacy is his story of his 11 and a half months in Treblinka, and it's embedded within the model that he built. And it took a few years to construct, and it's a mixed media installation made from hand-wrought elements and adapted sourced objects. It's undergone some changes over the years, including additions by the artist, as well as an encasing in a protective housing which prevents a full immersion into all areas, but it counters potential vandalism. And if you consider the large number of school groups coming through, that's why. Okay, Alan Krell noted that this enclosure was to the distress of its maker. Okay, as we know, there are a number of maps of Treblinka made by survivors, and Caroline Coles has noted that these cannot be comprehensive as each prisoner did not have full access to the entire site. And as we know from yesterday, the model is by no means the only one built by a Treblinka survivor, and Janko Viernik's model displayed at Lochemea Geta Ott. It's a detailed schematic by a man who survived due to his profession as a carpenter, that's Viernik. And also worthwhile to note that Viernik, who was 20 years older than Steyr, also wrote his testimony in 1944 for the Polish and Jewish underground in Warsaw. He fought in the Warsaw Uprising in 1944 and later testified at the Eichmann trial in 1961. Viernik's model was built at Lochemea Geta Ott in the 50s. It appears quite formalist in its mostly monochromatic and regulated scheme. The fences appear low and unintimidating to gain the impression of what has been a common thread in testimonies, that each section was designed to hide the true nature of the camp and confuse and beguile the victims. However, as I mentioned earlier, after re-examining the model yesterday, I think my opinion of it has changed from being purely formalist to looking at it more for its artistic and emotional integrity. In contrast, and in vivid colour and a more free-form incorporation of elements to demonstrate textures, Steyr's tableau incorporates a kinetic narrative as the viewer's gaze moves through the maze of horrors. Where Viernik's model is devoid of a population, Steyr's figures, made from a selection of prefabricated and customised objects, perform the narrative. Elements capture events, depict key people, and demonstrate the functions of the camps in different areas. The high walls of the labyrinth also returns Steyr to within the network of his nightmare. In this manner, the model transcends documentary and performs as an artistic expression of responses and emotions that have been manifested from Steyr's memories in a materiality. Now, according to Steyr's daughter Malka Silva, Steyr was inspired by the Viernik model. 1 year when Steyr had been on a trip to Israel, he visited Lochemea Geta Ott, he saw the model, and he was determined that it wasn't as he remembered, and one of the reasons that convinced him to build his own version. Okay. Recognised for its inherent purpose in the museum as a visual testimony, the Treblinka model has never really been considered or understood as a piece of art. For me, any evaluation of the model lacked this crucial element of artistic integrity, in addition to its didactic function as a topographical representation. Professor of Cultural Heritage and Museum Studies Andrea Whitcomb has described it as a multicoloured and almost folksy in its depiction of the camp. However, while Whitcomb appears to remove the model's artistic status, she notes its power to provoke a deep emotional response from the viewer, and I think that this is crucial. The individualised representation of remembered scenarios of the tableau are acknowledged, and regions of the model described by Whitcomb as an aide-memoire. So I agree with her latter assessment, but position the work as a memory palace manifested in the physical realm. The model's location is subterranean. It's a parallel plane, like the earth has cracked open, revealing an aperture to the underworld. Its layout appears to be more aligned to the philosophy of Fritz Kahn's 1930s illustrations of body machines, where humans have been reduced to mechanics and fuel, and indicative of the pillage of Jewish cargo to feed the war machine, rather than the lavish promise of spiritual ecstasy of St. Teresa's interior castle. The model, with its use of found and adapted objects, can also be considered of its time within the art world, and it appears as a precursor to the postmodern works of the young British artists Jake and Dinos Chapman in their Grand Guignolesque hell tableau of 2000, which was since replaced with a more grotesque version. But I've actually emailed them to find out whether they had encountered Steyer's model. I'm still waiting to hear back from them. But there's also the possibility that these tableaus are based on museum methods of creating large tabletop displays of war reenactments using models and figures. However, while the young British artists and Steyer both implemented similar aesthetics, unlike the Chapmans, Steyer's experiences were his own. And unlike Wiernik, who had produced a map before construction of his model, or the Chapmans' referencing of Goya's 19th century Disasters of War series, Steyer did not work from drawings or plans, but charted from his memories. And I think there's also you can compare Steyer's motivations with Simon Willenberg's sculptures, including his work, The Treblinka Uprising of 2003. And I believe that Treblinka at the Jewish Holocaust Centre is a manifested interior of the pit of Steyer's stomach, the past buried within, an anxiety which could never be relieved, despite the constant retelling of his experiences to his family and to others. The tableau presents itself as a labyrinth of both geography and narrative. It's a twisted tale through a warped skein. Steyer's model sets itself apart from the maps and models, as it is the only one that includes realistic figures of people, as well as the stories connected. In this way, it goes beyond documentation, and it reveals itself as the opening of the archives of memories and emotions manifested in materiality. Navigating through the various sections of the plateau soon becomes overwhelming with the high-level details presented, as well as what they represent. The viewer is immersed in the narratives. And then you can see the villainous Commander Kurt Franz, accompanied by his St. Bernard Barry, also Franz Stangl, and other Nazi and Ukrainian guards. Okay, the labyrinth initially appears as straightforward arrival, being stripped of clothes and possessions, and through the tube and the arc curtains to the gas chambers. But this A to B process is shown by Steyer for the deception in its simplicity. The key to the labyrinth is that it manipulates the pathway, causing the trajectory from A to B to not be traversed as the quickest nor the simplest route. Okay, I don't know if you've picked up the section with the arc curtains. There were curtains stolen from a synagogue, and they were used in front of the gas chambers, and I think that that's the most significant section of the model, because it's the entry to the archon, the ark. Okay, I'm running out of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to skip forward to Steyer's testimony, and just to demonstrate how I've got the same problem as everyone else, translations, and also reuniting testimony from the video department with objects. So just to give you an excerpt of Steyer.
When should they transfer jail?
In a couple of weeks later.
To the Totten camp.
Nee, als hij weer op mij gezien,
As soon as he saw me,
is hij gewoon, had hij gegeven duigen, weil het gewiss, ich bin einer von, was man kennt sich getrauen zu machen.
yeah. He felt that's very good, that because you are a person he could trust and discuss things.
Ja, en man hat auch geholfen zu reden zwischen sich. Nicht zu reden, aber man hat sich halt verständigt dabei.
And we were communicating.
Zu machen. Jiddisch hat geredet.
In Yiddish, we spoke in Yiddish.
Jiddisch, hat geredet in Jiddisch. Ich komme noch mit einem. Aber damals hat mir immer rübergebracht, hat gesehen, mir hat gesagt, damals hat man met uheim etwas für die Zettie.
And he suggested that
Man
we
getracht, dass die ganze
something.
Zeit mit gearbeitet. Sie gewesen die Arbeit sehr mies, bloß bei heute Menschen.
The work was very unpleasant, only dealing with dead bodies.
Hat gearbeitet die ganze Zeit, ich mit dem Jello, aber nicht mal sich verständigt.
I'm sorry, I have to stop here with Chaim. He's a very charming man. But just to juxtapose, there's probably a few layers here. You see the narrative, the coming out of his mouth. You hear it. You hear Philip Maisel doing a translation as he's going along, but he's also paraphrasing, which is not useful to an academic researcher. It will give you an idea of what he's saying. I've got a translation here which was prepared by one of our volunteers who is has been speaking Yiddish all his life. And in the background you'll see what he's talking about. Okay, there's also Steyer also did the Shoah Foundation testimony, and I'll just quickly skip through this, where he uses the model, and you can see the previous incarnation where it's just surrounded by mesh, and he's using his pointer to demonstrate where various narratives occurred. Okay, just in the museum, there's an interactive screen, and it lights up different sections, and relates, and it also gives additional historical information. And this is a model of the Czestochowa synagogue, which we have finally been able to transfer from the Jewish Museum, thanks to Malka Silva, Steyer's daughter, and both models are in process of getting professionally conserved and will be reunited. Okay, so just to conclude, I hope this has demonstrated just the different facets of the museum, where we've got the different versions of testimony, and there's so much work to do, and this is just one of our items, and everything deserves so much more attention. So the challenge for the archive is to ensure that the materials are available for detailed research, and I hope these can continue and that as a way of honouring in the long term those who have suffered. Thank you.